The episode opens with Lucy once again caught in a moment of restless curiosity, where ordinary life begins to feel too predictable for her. And this time, her attention is drawn toward the idea of social status and recognition after witnessing how certain individuals are treated differently, simply because of their perceived importance or influence, which immediately sparks something in her mind, leading her to believe that if she can elevate her own image and position, she might finally gain the respect and admiration she feels she deserves. And without taking the time to fully understand what that actually entails, Lucy quickly decides that she needs to reinvent not just her behavior, but her entire social presence. And this decision sets off a chain of events that blends ambition, misunderstanding, and her signature overconfidence into yet another unpredictable situation. As she begins to observe the habits and mannerisms of people she considers sophisticated, attempting to imitate their speech, posture, and interactions in a way that feels exaggerated and slightly disconnected from reality. While Viv watches this transformation unfold with a mixture of skepticism and concern, already anticipating that Lucy's interpretation of higher status will lead to complications, and despite her attempts to offer grounded advice, Lucy remains focused on her goal, convinced that projecting confidence and exclusivity is the key to achieving the recognition she desires. And this belief leads her to adopt a more selective and almost dismissive attitude toward others, which creates immediate tension in her daily interactions, particularly at the bank, where her new behavior disrupts the usual flow of work, as she begins treating routine tasks as beneath her and prioritizing appearances over efficiency, causing confusion among customers and frustration for Mr. Mooney, who quickly notices the shift and questions her about it, only to receive vague and self-assured explanations that do little to clarify her intentions. And as the situation develops, Lucy becomes increasingly invested in maintaining this new persona, even going so far as to create small illusions of importance around herself, such as implying that she has connections or opportunities that set her apart from others, which, while not entirely believable, are delivered with enough confidence to momentarily intrigue those around her. And this creates a strange dynamic where some people begin to treat her differently, not because they fully believe her claims, but because they are curious enough to see where it leads, and this reaction reinforces Lucy's belief that she is on the right track, encouraging her to push further and take bigger risks in shaping her image, which ultimately leads her to orchestrate situations where she can appear influential or in control, even if those situations are based on shaky foundations. And as expected, the gap between perception and reality begins to widen, creating moments where Lucy struggles to maintain consistency in her story and behavior, leading to a series of comedic misunderstandings that highlight the fragility of her constructed identity. While Viv becomes increasingly involved in trying to manage the fallout, often stepping in to clarify or smooth over situations before they escalate too far, though her efforts are only partially successful as Lucy continues to double down on her approach, unwilling to admit that her strategy might be flawed. And the tension reaches a peak when Lucy is placed in a position where she must deliver on the expectations she has created, forcing her to confront the limitations of her plan in a very direct way, as the pressure to perform exposes the lack of substance behind her carefully crafted image, leading to a moment of uncertainty where she must decide whether to continue the act or acknowledge the truth. And in classic Lucy fashion, she initially attempts to improvise her way through the situation, relying on quick thinking and confidence to navigate the challenge. But as the situation becomes more complex, it becomes clear that improvisation alone is not enough to fully sustain the illusion, resulting in a turning point where Lucy is forced to reevaluate her approach. And although this realization does not come without resistance, it ultimately allows her to step back and recognize that true respect and recognition cannot be achieved through surface-level changes or exaggerated performances, but rather through genuine effort and authenticity. And as the episode moves toward its conclusion, Lucy gradually begins to let go of the persona she has been trying to maintain, returning to a more natural and honest version of herself, which brings a sense of relief to both Viv and Mr. Mooney, who have been dealing with the consequences of her behavior throughout the episode. And in the final moments, Lucy reflects on her experience with a mix of humor and reluctant acceptance, acknowledging that while her attempt to elevate her status did not go as planned, it provided her with a better understanding of what truly matters, even if she is not entirely ready to abandon her desire for recognition, leaving the audience with the familiar sense that Lucy's journey is ongoing, and that her next attempt to improve or redefine herself will likely bring a new set of challenges, misunderstandings, and comedic situations that continue to define her character and the world around her. As Lucy returns to her normal routine after letting go of her carefully constructed image, there is a noticeable shift in how she carries herself. Not in a dramatic or exaggerated way like before, but in a more subtle and slightly more self-aware manner, as if the experience has left a small but meaningful impression on her perspective. And for a brief period, she seems content with simply being herself, engaging with others more naturally and without the need to impress or manipulate perceptions, which brings a sense of balance back to her interactions at the bank, much to the relief of both Viv and Mr. Mooney, who cautiously observe this calmer version of Lucy while still remaining alert for any signs of another sudden change. And although things appear stable on the surface, Lucy's underlying desire for something more never truly disappears. Instead, it evolves into a quieter form of ambition that begins to influence her thoughts in less obvious ways, leading her to reflect on what she has learned and how she might apply it differently in the future. And rather than immediately jumping into another elaborate plan, she starts to consider the idea of building something gradually. Something that aligns more closely with who she actually is rather than who she thinks she should be, which represents a small but significant shift in her approach, even if it is not yet fully developed. And as she experiments with this new mindset, she begins to notice that her interactions feel less forced and more genuine, creating moments where she connects with others in a way that feels more rewarding than her previous attempts at gaining attention. And this realization begins to reshape her understanding of what it means to be valued, suggesting that respect and recognition might come from consistency and authenticity rather than performance and illusion. And while this idea does not completely override her instinct for bold action, it introduces a new layer of consideration that tempers her decisions, making her slightly more cautious and thoughtful in how she approaches situations. And this change becomes evident in the way she handles small challenges throughout the remainder of the episode, choosing more practical solutions instead of immediately escalating things into larger, more complicated scenarios, which not only reduces the level of chaos, but also allows her to experience a different kind of satisfaction, one that is less dramatic but more stable. And as Viv observes this development, she begins to show a bit more confidence in Lucy's ability to grow, offering encouragement that feels more genuine than before, while Mr. Mooney, though still skeptical, acknowledges the improvement in his own way by giving Lucy a bit more space to operate without constant supervision. And this subtle shift in their dynamic highlights the impact of Lucy's experience, even if it is not presented as a complete transformation. And by the time the episode reaches its final moments, there is a sense that Lucy has taken a small step forward, not in terms of achieving a grand goal, but in gaining a clearer understanding of herself and how she fits into the world around her. And although her journey is far from over and her tendency toward impulsive decisions will likely resurface in future situations, there is now a hint that each experience is contributing to a gradual evolution, shaping her into someone who, while still unpredictable and full of energy, is beginning to recognize the value of balance, patience, and authenticity, leaving the story on a note that feels both familiar and slightly more grounded as Lucy looks ahead with curiosity rather than urgency, suggesting that whatever comes next will be approached with just a bit more awareness than before. even if it still carries the potential for the kind of comedic chaos that defines her character.